This will be a step-by-step guide on how I'm going to install USB fans into my Jeep for ventilation. They'll be removable. I'll set up a series of fans, much like what you see here, and after some trial and error, I've finally decided on a design that I'll show you when I do the larger fans. This idea I got from a Jason Laverty, who also has a YouTube channel. And it was something that he pointed out, and I decided to do it myself. And he didn't necessarily have a how-to, so I'm going to go through how I decided to do it and what worked for me. The larger fans are going to be what I'm going to use to force air in, and then these smaller fans will be ventilation fans to take the humidity out during cold nights. And I'm going to make them so they're reversible, so that you can either have the air blowing in or blowing out. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to take care of any gaps around the edges and how I keep them secured in the windows, and then also how I deal with the wiring. Okay, so what these are USB fans that are used for gaming consoles, and they come with these rubber feet on them to either stand them up or lay them down on your game console. And what I decided to do was remove all the feet so that they could all fit snugly together, and then use zip ties basically all over it, which I'll show you exactly how. But one of the problems, once you put these in your window, if you're in an area where there's a lot of bugs, you're going to have gaps on either side, and then you want it to also kind of squeeze into the window so that there's no gaps around the edges. So my plan is actually to use styrofoam on the sides, and then I've got some copper pipe insulation, which I'm going to cut up, and then I'm going to lay that along the top, and that way I can squeeze the window and the frame with the unit in between it, and it'll provide a secure connection. So the first thing that I did on all of them is remove these stops, and I won't go through all of it with you. I'll just show you what they look like, but it's as easy as just pulling them out. It's just a screw in the actual stop itself, and then what that does is it leaves actually the cover over the fan loose. So if you did all of them at the same time, the cover is going to come off. So what I do is two on each side, and then I'll zip tie it and show you how I do that to keep them all together. So the reason that I zip tie them together is because when I tried to put a zip tie all the way around it, there was no friction once the stops are removed to stop it from sliding back and forth or up and down, and so they kept popping out. So what I did instead was wrap zip ties all the way around from these two holes into these two holes, and then secured it here in the back. But I looked at other methods like gluing them together, but I wanted something that wasn't as permanent. And then I thought, you know, there's really not a whole lot of surface area on the edges. You've got the edge here, and then you've got this little base here. So there's not a whole lot of surface area for the glue to stick to. So that, again, is why I went with the zip tie method, but you can, you know, try whatever works for you, but this just happens to work for me. Okay, so I removed the rubber pieces along with the screws, and I've done that on each side of two of the units. Now, one thing to point out is before you go ahead and put these together, you want to make sure they're all in the right upright position, that you've got them all facing the right way, because you don't want one blowing one way and the other one blowing another way. And then also you need to take into consideration the length of the wires. So this one happens to be the longest wire and is connected to that unit with a shorter wire, and then I've got another single unit here that also has a short wire. But you want all of the wires to run in one direction, and then you want them so that this isn't right in the middle of one of them. So the way I have it lined up, both the USB connectors are all the way on the side of all three units when they're laid out together, and then I'll secure those like I did with the small ones, all in order, so that they're kind of out of the way, and they won't interfere with putting it up in the window. So I've removed two from each side of each one, and then all I do is I take zip ties, and in this case they're 11-inch zip ties, and they're type 21, but they happen to fit through. I'll try to show it here. So you've got the hole here from where the screw was, and then you have the other hole from the screw here, and you just feed it on through and then pull that all the way through until it hits the end. And by doing this and securing these two together, you're also securing these metal covers over the fans to the unit itself, so you don't need the screws in there anymore. And so then all I do is take the back of this and the part that was fed through and feed that through the other way, through the other one, and then just pull that tight. And now the two units are pretty much joined together, and then once you feed it through and secure the zip tie and pull that tight, now what you've done is you've secured the two units together. So if you do that on each corner, and so you do it from the top here, the bottom here, and then I'll take these off, and then I'll attach it to that one, and by doing that you'll have 3 units all together, and they're not going to go anywhere. They're really solid. They don't move up and down, they don't twist, and you know, the zip ties are probably going to last quite a while before you have to replace them. And if you happen to, you know, put one on upside down or put one on backwards, or you decide you want to change the configuration, you can just cut them off. So it's a simple solution to keep all the units together. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up all the other corners, and then I'll show you how I managed to secure the wires so that they would stay out of the way. Okay, so I went ahead and attached all 4 corners, and even though I said to look out for it, I ended up turning this fan upside down, and after it was installed I noticed it, so had to cut off the zip ties and redo it, which is again a great reason to use the zip ties because it's easily reversible. So then what I did is I took off the rubber components on the outer edges, so all 8 of them, 4 on each side, and then just back the screw out of these, and then just reattach the screw right into the unit so that it would hold this part of the cover down. So now that these are all together, they don't twist, they don't move, and it's a stable unit. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the wires. So you got the long wire here that goes all the way to the edge, you got a shorter wire that covers the edge, or out to the edge, and then the last wire goes all the way out here. So all I did is I just take these and I kind of line them all up side by side, and then I take a zip tie, and I would just and I might have to put 2 zip ties together. I don't know if this is going to fit or not, but just wrap a zip tie all the way around the edge, and this is what it looks like when it's done. So I just wrapped one around, I kind of stayed in the middle so it wouldn't cut off the fan circulation. I know it's not a whole lot of surface area, but I just tried to stay in the middle. And then, as you can see here in the bottom, I just lined up all the wires so that they were side by side, and kept them taut so that when I put the foam over the top of this, when I figure out how I'm going to do that, it wouldn't interfere, and they wouldn't get in the way. So so I've got, oops, I got the one zip tie here, and I got another one here, here, and here, all the way along, so they wrap all the way around to hold the wires tight. So looking here at the small units, I've got them in between the window and the frame, and you can see, you know, the gap that I was talking about earlier, here and here, and then there's actually a little bit of a gap up top, and then even more so of one down here where the wires are. So luckily the packaging that came with either these small units or the large ones, it came with 2 of these blocks, and they actually work really well up in here and on this side, and it's just the right dimension lengthwise. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these with glue so that they're permanent, and then from there I'll figure out how I'm going to use the copper insulation to go across the top and the bottom, so that when I squeeze the window against the frame with this in here, it'll create a nice seal. So here's the final result after playing around with it a little bit. This is pretty much what I ended up with on the smaller unit. I know I skipped a bunch of steps, so I'll quickly walk through on this one. It's pretty simple, actually. Like I said, I used the foam that was in the packaging, and I didn't have to cut it down to size, but I'm going to have to come up with another solution for this, so I'll probably end up buying foam of this style, cutting it down to size, and just sticking it here. I actually glued it to the sides. It didn't work out too well It sort of sticks, but not really. But after test fitting it in the window, I think it's going to end up being okay. So after putting the pieces on here, what I did is I took the copper insulation pipe, and there's a slit that runs down it, so I just separated it, and then I cut off a section, and that section is what is on the bottom and also on the top. And I put it with the curved part facing down and up, and what that'll do is create a nice seal around the window and the frame, and I'll show that in a minute. So all I did was take that and put it on. It's not glued to the unit. I looked at that. I don't think it's going to work. So all I did was took a zip tie and one around the edge, here in the middle, and then here on the other edge. And on this end where the wires are, I kept the zip tie on the inside so that I could move, sorry for the camera angle there, the wires from side to side. And I'll show you, because when I reverse this, the wires have to go inside, so I have to make it so that the wires can always be folded in depending on which way I have the fan blowing. So I'll just mimic that on this. Like I said, I'm not going to walk through that. It's pretty, I think it's self-explanatory. But let me show you what I'm talking about. And I think I can do this with one hand, but so the window's already rolled down, and I made it so that it's snug enough that I can just press in on one side and jam it in like that. So as you can see, it's already towards the top. It stays in place without the window being up, and then when I roll the window up, I can make it pretty tight, or as tight as I want to. And then you can see that even with the zip tie, it doesn't come out real good on the camera, but there is 0 gaps between the window and up here on the top of the frame. So when I put bug netting around it, which I'll do later, the camping trip I have coming up this weekend, it's so cold in the mountains, there aren't going to be any bugs, so I don't have to worry about that. But in the future, I'll just wrap some netting around it and just glue it to the top and probably just call it a day. But so this is what I'm talking about with the wires. So when it's this way, I can pull the wires to the inside, and then again when I bring the window down, nothing moves, and then I can pull this out and just try to do this again with one hand. Turn it around, stick it in. And then the wires here, I can pull this down here and pull the wires to the inside. And then roll up the window, and it self-seals, and it's a little bit off there because I don't have it in straight. And there you go. So now, same thing, now the fan's blowing the other way. I've got the wires pulled on the inside, and it is a pretty big bundle of wires because there's 2 units and 2 units, so those are wired together, and then I had to wire the 2 units together, which it already comes, there's the extra adapter if I wanted to put on another set, but the 2 units are combined right here, and then I have the cord down here, which will go to the Beat It power station. And so now I can run the fans with the exhaust coming in or out, or exhaust out and that or blowing air in. And I think it's going to work really well. I've taken this out and put it in a few times, and with the zip ties, all the padding stays in place. It's a lot easier to install with 2 hands. But so I'll have one there, and I'll put one in over the other window there, and then I can take them out and put them in as I want. And so I can use these in the rain. I went ahead and purchased and installed these rain visors. I'm not a big fan of them, but for the point of using the fans in the rain, it will help. And these aren't exactly really flush with the outside of the window, so I can still tuck these in a bit more and get that seal because of the way I have the padding here. and it'll still somewhat block it in the rain. I'd imagine if the rain's coming in this direction, it would still leak inside, but in a drizzle, I should be able to use them no problem. And I probably won't be able to use the large ones even in a drizzle, because enough of it just won't be covered. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna finish these up at some point in the future once I buy the new foam, but I'll be able to give the small ones a shot this weekend, and I'll post down below how they worked, and maybe even comment on them maybe when I do some reviews when I'm actually living in the Jeep next year. But anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.